Welcome to Deciphering Growth, the show that explores mental health from every angle. We bring you conversations with personal opinions, stories, and practical tips. We aim to break down the stigma and help you live your best life. So please sit back and let's dive in. Before we begin, we want to remind our listeners that this podcast represents the opinions of Tiffany Graves, Eric Stone, and the show's guests. The content here should not be used as medical advice. It is for informational purposes only, and please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast should not be in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing a standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. There is no guarantee regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship.
Hello,
All right,
Tiffy.
welcome back, guys. Hello. It's hopefully going to be a great day. FC plays today. Hopefully they win.
Ooh, I'm not aware. I love that stadium though. Beautiful stadium.
Yes, yes, it is. Speaking of stadiums, we're going to dive into media, mental health, and quote unquote normal. Those are some words put together, right?
It is. I'll be honest, Tiffany, I think this is one of your more unique pitches, but I'm really excited about it. I think it'll still be very valuable. And I say that because when you think about the idea of being normal, I think people are like, well, yeah, like what's the big deal? But to people who have been told in different settings or situations they're not normal or they need to fit that range, I don't think that's a stretch to label that as traumatic. And I believe, Tiffany, that was kind of what you were thinking, but I do not want to speak for you. But that was how I connected it when you talked about this as an idea.
Yeah, yeah. So really looking at kind of how people and heavy air quotes on like describe normal within the realm of mental health and like what fits into the boxes, so to speak, of mental health and like how that's changed. Like decades ago, it was pretty stigmatized. It wasn't something that like the media portrayed in any shape or form and in a good light. And like even now, while it's becoming more of like a um what is the word I'm looking for? More prominent in
Mm.
our media today. There's still some pretty like stigma related quote unquote normalization things that people try to force people in.
Yeah, I agree. And I would think just like what normal is for like different types of people or people with different identities. Like this is what a normal veteran acts like, looks like, is like. This is what a normal parent is like, acts like, is like. This is what a normal person from this generation is like. And while like
Hmm.
stereotypes can be helpful for breaking down data of like, okay, this is something that can genuinely be true, it does not capture everyone. There's very few things that are 100%, other than we all breathe air and need water, and think that the Bengals need an indoor stadium instead of the outdoor one they have. Those are the things. And if you're not from Cincinnati, you don't get that. But if you're from Cincinnati, you know in your bones that everyone believes that. I don't know. You could call me out, Tiffany, but that's my one rant about our city is why do we not have a domed football stadium in the Midwest?
I mean, it's a good question. There's some nasty weather that they play in. Um, but yeah, I think something to that really like caught my eye when looking into this, and to this day kind of like mildly frustrates me, is the simplification of mental health issues in media. So oftentimes it's represented in very simplistic terms. You categorize people as either normal or abnormal. And this binary approach really fails to capture like the true complexity that mental health is indeed a spectrum and
Mhm.
not just something that is one color or another color.
It's well said. Yeah, I think we've talked about this here. I know we have. I have the memory. I know we talked about it, but like there used to be underrepresentation of mental health in media, and that was a
Mhm.
problem. I don't know if I would say it's overrepresented now, but I do think it's oversimplified. Like I do really think when I'm watching movies or shows, um, it's just a little like, oh, okay, like we didn't know what to do with this character for background writing. You know what? Let's throw in a mental health piece. Like, and I don't know if it's like explicitly stated that way, but I'll be honest. I'm sure you've had this experience too, Tiffany. You're watching a movie or a show, and it's like, oh, okay, they didn't know what to do with this character, so now it's insert thing. The one that I think has gotten a lot better in the past couple of years is they don't just throw an addiction plot in for characters and then not come back to it. I think that's like more harmful than helpful. I'd love to have had research to pull that up, but I just today wanted to come in a little more unfiltered, just talking about it. So I do think that there's just a need to be honest about what is shown in media is not going to be everyone's reality.
Yeah, yeah, and that leads into my next point is that there's an overemphasis on diagnosis. So media very often portrays very clear-cut diagnoses. So it's either very exaggerated so that you can tell there's a diagnosis or mental health issue. But this can easily marginalize those who experience things that don't align with the portrayal. So someone who's very on the opposite end of that extreme spectrum can be like, oh, well, if that's what depression looks like, I must not be depressed because I don't have that experience.
Well, and I think people also like get told in so many different directions what they should be experiencing or what it looks like.
Mhm.
And it's just a problem. I mean, even just if you think about the United States, drugs are allowed to be marketed directly to consumers, versus European Union, you cannot do that. There's not allowed to be all these commercials and things to try to influence behavior. They are like, hey, we should let medical professionals decide what medications they're recommending, not try to influence consumers to ask for them. Um, yeah, I have had so many sessions where someone is sad and then it's like, "Well, my depression doesn't look like that," or "My anxiety," or I mean, even just like, "My trauma doesn't look like that." And I think that's something where, like, we have to be really careful of, like, talking about, "Well, this is everyone's journey," or "Everyone does this," or "This is what it needs to be." Because it's very shame-inducing to think, "Oh, I'm doing EMDR," or I'm doing trauma therapy, but my recovery doesn't look like that."
Mhm.
I think it'd be easy to think thoughts like, "What's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong?" versus, like, maybe my path is different.
Yeah. Yeah. It really makes me think about, and maybe a little off topic, but it makes me think about like Thor's PTSD journey and Iron Man's PTSD journey and how like vastly different
Ooh.
they are, but at the same time how like they're really good portrayals of what like struggles with mental health glimpses can look like. Like Thor, let himself go and he like, started drinking to like
Mm,
numb kind of what he was dealing with. Very
mm,
real kind of experience
it's a good
for
example.
some people. The Iron Man one that comes to mind is where he has a panic attack in um I think it's a dining setting where someone is asking him questions about like his trauma and he goes into a panic attack. And he makes a statement of like, "Oh, this can't be happening to me. Like, I can't have a panic attack." And it really kind of plays to that
Ooh,
like idea of like strong people don't have mental health issues. And I was like, "Oh, that's a great little clip of just recognizing that like how we really portray how people
ooh,
can or choose to deal with mental health."
yeah. Well, I'm sitting here, I was like, it's gonna sound like Bradley Cooper is, like, my favorite actor here for a second, and he's up there for me, but there are so many movies he has done where either mental health is explicitly the focus of his character or a part, and so I just maybe 3 movies I'm more aware of, but First one would be American Sniper. The second one I'm thinking of is Silver Lining in the Playbook. Um, but the third option, I think as well. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna fumble it. I'll come back to it. But he plays these characters, I think, so well. A Star Is Born is the third one. Don't ask me why I couldn't connect that. But there's different angles of mental health. Whether I think
Mhm.
bipolar, addiction, and then PTSD. Um, I would say those are three, like, while there's you gotta depict some symptoms, I felt like it was actually very accurate, very, like, not stereotypy, and kinda showed that it's, like, a very complex, thing. I'm not gonna ruin those movies or go into them, but I just there's just one scene that sticks out to me every time in American Sniper where, Bradley Cooper's character is returned from, like, I think his second or third deployment in a war zone. And there's a birthday party going on, but he is sitting on the couch around no one, staring at the blank TV. And it shows him hearing like sounds that he would have heard when he was deployed, and then like going into this party, getting overstimulated, and like reacting poorly to a loud dog, his dog. Um, that I didn't think was stereotyping. I actually liked how they showed how complex it was, and how it was just like normal life is happening, but then there's this person obviously struggling.
Yeah, that's a touching movie. For sure. I remember watching that one and being like, "Whew, this one hits a little hard."
Yeah, they're real. They're very authentic raw movies. I watched A Star Is Born in the theater after coming from
Oh,
my internship at an addiction hospital. And I like whatever this is worth, like I had to tell myself this isn't real. This isn't real. This is a story because it was like strikingly accurate and good about like they show group, they show meetings, they show the pre-struggle, the post-struggle of like get treatment. And that it was yeah, that's just a powerful movie. It's not a light movie, but I just think those examples can be helpful. So I hope like obviously we're a mental health podcast, we're a trauma podcast. We believe in the power of media and how it can change perceptions. I think it
mhm,
just comes down to like who is deciding what those things are. And just for example, we've talked about some things on this podcast. Not everybody sees everything the same, but there are a lot of things that the therapist community have a consensus on. And so almost like who's making those decisions, who's helping advocate for the progression of something or showing. And like it's 2024, so that's probably expensive, having a mental health consultant or someone to help this play out. But I think that's really important because, I mean, just think about some of the books that have been really popular, or movies, or pick your favorite media. Like, we know that has an impact, and like it goes with you. So, like the shows and movies you watched as a kid, the music you listen to, the things you're exposed to, like that does impact you if
mhm.
that's what you think something
Yeah,
should look
yeah.
like.
And I think that kind of rolls us into this idealization of mental resilience that sometimes we see in media. How it can glorify characters who overcome significant challenges with ease, making mental resilience the norm, can create unrealistic expectations for individuals struggling with those mental illnesses, making them feel inadequate if they can't bounce back as quickly as these characters
No, no,
or
I mean,
people.
yeah, so we've kind of talked a little bit about, I don't want to say real, but like media, like acting, scenes portrayed. But like
Hmm.
we live in a world of people being air quotes authentic selves. And so like if you see celebrities or influencers highlight what their depression looks like, or anxiety or trauma or eating disorder or bipolar recovery. I just think that can be like I think about the mom guilt is that's a clinical term now. Like legitimately, like us therapists, we use this
Hmm.
term. Like there's it's not the same as dad guilt, but mom guilt's like, oh my gosh, these moms are competing and look what they did for their party or look what they're doing. And it makes me sad. It's not like a oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by these other women, and I don't want to mansplain it, so I gotta check myself. But it becomes like a competition and a like, okay, who's the downward social comparison? Not a oh man, that's so cool. And I don't even know if it's like community to community, but it's just this online thing of like judging each other. And trying to outdo.
Oh yeah, it creates such a toxic cesspool of like competition over like things that inherently like yes, to some people they matter, but like overall to your happiness they don't matter. Like your 5-year-old isn't going to care if they didn't have fireworks for their birthday if they ultimately got like the
Well,
clown that
and
they
it's like
wanted.
we have to do one on mom guilt, and it can't be me mansplaining it, but we have to do one on mom guilt. We're gonna get Audrey to come back. Maybe she'd do that one. Audrey Schroer is a legend around here.
We can
So
also
Audrey,
get
if you're
your wife to
listening,
do it.
you know what? That's I the fact that like my first suggestion is not my wife and then you suggest my wife, like that's hilarious. And I'm glad this is recorded and it won't be clipped out. Yeah, we could ask my wife. That's amazing. That is I don't know how to recover from that. But yes, we have some amazing moms and women connected to this podcast that we would love to hear their experience. But that's the thing. I think we're not occurring in isolation. This may sound strange, but I want to just discuss one thing that I think connects to this. Like advertising and marketing is rooted in psychology. I'm going to nerd out for 10 seconds. Like Watson, he gets kicked out of his school because he's cheating on his wife with his intern. And they're like, that's not appropriate. You can't do that. He's like, okay, whatever. And then he goes on and starts a marketing firm and changes the world literally as we know it. So, like commercials and advertisements, all the stuff, it is not to literally get you to do it just now. I feel like this is the common misperception of like, oh, I saw a Coke commercial. Well, I didn't buy a Coke, so it didn't get me. No,
Mhm.
it's that the next time I'm thirsty and I go into the gas station, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they have Coke. That's how advertising works. It's just to steer my decision making. And it does work. And if any of you are listening, like, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't change me. It's like, yes, it does. Like, if it didn't work, there's no way it's a billions on billions of dollars on advertising and marketing if it didn't actually change your behavior.
Mhm. Yeah.
So Tiffany's like, where are we going? So when we think about influencers, so they may not be paid advertisements, but if you sit and look at your algorithm, and they've done tons of research on algorithms, and you see a bunch of stuff that makes you feel mom guilt, or I'm not a good enough therapist, why don't I have these cute whatever videos that explain things well, or this or that, or this or that, like it
Mhm.
does have an impact and it is real. And so if we're comparing what our experience is like, oh, I'm not normal, who decides what normal is?
Yeah, and that plays into that like success equals mental wellness kind of media unrealistic standard of like, media often equates success with mental health, implying that achieving certain life milestones, career successes, wealth, relationships, amazing birthday parties, like will result in this perfect life, perfect mental health scenario. And it can often feed into disappointment, guilt, and shame, when those achievements, don't bring the emotional fulfillment that they're portraying.
I think it's just something we have to be really mindful of and careful of. And I think we all judge, we all have these reactions to things around us online or in person. And so, like, that's not a bad thing in itself. It's like, oh, I noticed this person. But it's like the follow up thought
Mhm.
after noticing that is our responsibility. So if I notice, oh, that's interesting. And my first thought is like my biases are showing, like that's a problem, and like that's the part where I think we have to be really mindful of how are we interpreting that data. um and like there's probably not billions of ways of doing therapy, but there's at least millions, I would say. Like we customize these paths, we get them set up to someone. So it's like
Mhm.
I think there is a lot of ranges for people, and so I think we have to be really careful. um Like, where are we getting that baseline? But also, like, who's telling us what's normal for mental health? And, like, I guess I'm definitely biased. I hope it's licensed mental health professionals or medical professionals or, maybe people you can trust that have your best interest at heart. They're like, "Hey, this isn't healthy for you. You need, you know, to think about this a different way." I don't know. I have to hope it's that, not
Mhm.
Instagram ads and AI algorithms deciding what normal should be because it gets more engagement or less engagement.
Yeah. I think too, something that kind of creates friction for me is that oftentimes mental health issues are linked to specific stereotypes, like the tortured artist or the mad genius, which then can just skew perceptions and create unrealistic standards about like who is quote unquote allowed to have mental health challenges and like how they function.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think we all are allowed to have challenges, and I think it's just this like Mm, it's just this very tricky. I'm not in higher ed, but I think one of the challenges that's happening is like most students coming into college, high school, junior high, like have focusing or attention issues. And I think you could look at COVID, you could look at other things, and I'm not trying to get all whatever. And so I just think that it like things keep changing, things keep moving, and so it's like we have to find what works for that person, less so than, like, what works for everyone across the board. Because there's probably not a solution like that for a lot of things. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know, I think this is a good conversation. I think maybe the focus of this would be the cost of when you're trying to push someone into a box that may not fit. Like,
Yeah.
I just remember this very powerful moment when I was in therapy as the client, and I said, "I'm an idiot because I can't learn, I can't study, da 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 da." And my therapist had to say, "You're not an idiot, you're getting overwhelmed, so that's why you can't retain information." Which some of you may be like, "Well, that's pretty basic, whatever." But I promise you in that moment, that was probably the most life-changing thing someone had ever said to me and really helped me move forward in my life, and heal some things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too that really speaks to like how tailored good therapy sessions are to each individual to help kind of combat that like normal narrowed version that media portrays of mental health. You know, that constant positivity, that high energy, that like, oh, like I'm being productive today, which can contribute to inadequacy or feelings of failure when those don't match up. Which just goes again to like what Eric is saying is like really each session of therapy is very highly tailored to make sure that we're meeting each individual needs and it's not boxed the way that is presented in media.
Uh, well, Tiff, I know you did a lot of prep for this one. Is there anything else that you were like, "Okay, this is stuff I wanted to bring up or bring to the surface in this discussion?"
Yeah, the last 2 points I have on here is the perception of mental health myths. So media's portrayal of quote unquote normal mental health can perpetuate myths and misconceptions, such as the idea that mental health challenges are rare or that they can easily be overcome with willpower alone. Um, that's bullshit. And then the other
Mm,
one is the erosion of empathy, and this one actually garners some concern for me. The unrealistic media standards that erode societal empathy for those struggling with mental health issues. If media is only portraying extreme cases as quote unquote abnormal, society is starting to become less understanding of everyday struggles that don't fit into that dramatic narrative shown in media, creating an overall shift in societal empathy for individuals that don't fit into that extreme, which is very concerning.
wow. Like, some things are getting better, but not everything is, and I think this is a good thing to kinda, like it's not like sounding the alarm, but it's like, "Hey, like, this matters. This if it keeps going that direction is going to cause other issues."
Yeah. I think the fact that like there's there's already like very low amounts of research showing that like societal empathy is like decreasing for individuals who are not portraying extreme cases of mental health really really speaks to like a broader like saddening issue that is going on within society as a whole and how like black and white thinking is really becoming a prominent way of thinking.
Yeah. I feel like even though I've brought up some of the points, I need time to, like, decompress and think through some of this just because it's like It's concerning. Like I have like kind of a very somber feeling right now having this discussion just because it's
Mhm.
not the boogeyman, it's not the Loch Ness monster, and if you believe in those things, I respect you, but I'm just it's this is real. Like this is happening every day, every second, every moment. People having this trap of comparing themselves, trying to fit in, trying to not. Um, and I think sometimes we kid ourselves about how far we've come. In
Mhm.
2024 with mental health, when we're talking about youth mental health, adult mental health, like it's it's a problem. It's like it's a real problem. Some things have gotten better, but not everything. And I just think about all the stats, Tiffany, we shared last episode about conversion therapy and queer mental health and like how I mean those numbers are just
Mhm.
jarring. I'm just thinking about the 8 times more likely to attempt suicide if you don't have supportive caregivers. Like that's so problematic. Like so yes, there's some gains, but so problematic that there are such healthcare
Yeah.
discrepancies just about everywhere right now.
Yeah. That being said, maybe next
Oh,
episode, Eric, we dive a little bit deeper into societal empathy and the trauma it may or may not be causing.
I am ready for that. I think before we're done, I want to just plug my colleague Tiffany here. Tiffany has started something that I think is truly incredible. I have no stake in this in any capacity, but I think it's pretty incredible, and I really think that Tiffany should just maybe share a little bit about it, if you're comfortable, Tiffany, about some of these therapy initiatives you're having to kind of engage people, because I think it ties into what we're talking about today, disconnected people getting support. So can you tell us about your newest launch that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so recently I'm in the process of finalizing some therapeutic Dungeon and Dragons games with the hope of bringing back that connection, that empathy, that human alliance while helping individuals like build skills as well in a very like non-traditional therapeutic realm.
I think it's incredible. Tiffany has been creating this and developing this for quite some time. And I just think it's amazing to really lower the stigma and barrier to get mental health support and connections. So um, check out Blue Garden Counseling and see when some of these things are launching. I think right now it's a wait list, kind of like a hype building right now. But I'm gonna be honest, if you're interested in any capacity, you should reach out now because that is going to fill up. There's absolutely no way that that will not fill up with just the setup and the thing. So if you're interested at all or know people that could benefit, um, I would really encourage that you reach out sooner than later because that wait list is almost full. It's getting there. I think you're gonna be bursting when you start that, Tiffany.
Yeah, I think I've already had a very overwhelming amount of people being like, I need flyers so I can start sending all these people to you. And I'm like, let's put on some training wheels, guys. I gotta get it launched first.
I love it.
But yeah. That being said, I appreciate you guys being here. Always appreciate working with Eric. We want you to check out our Patreon. It is free. You get all access to all of our episodes. If you pay $1, you get access to our soapboxes and some of our fun other content. And then we're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, all the fun big names.
I almost was laughing to myself if like you could pay $1 and you don't have to hear the soapboxes. Like maybe is that enticing? Probably to my wife who's gonna listen to this and be like, hey, shameless plug, not me, someone else. So that's hilarious. But no, we love to have you. We love the tips. We love the feedback. And again, thanks for being with us. Thanks for the valuable feedback. It means a lot.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Deciphering Growth. We hope you found our conversation helpful and insightful. Subscribe to our podcast for more episodes and check out our Patreon for more content. Don't hesitate to contact us on social media if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.